Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 1 discussion. Welcome to day 2 of Teaser season for patch 3.28, the upcoming unnamed league for Path of Exile 1. Grinding Games decided to leave a teaser video for us with very little explanation, but it's a massive one. This could be one of the biggest changes we've seen to the base game, if the way that some people in the community are interpreting it is correct. Let's just quickly watch this video because they fit a lot into just 12 or so seconds of video in total. The actual video itself runs for 14, but there's a little bit of time at the start and at the end that are mostly just black screens. Here we have the Legacy of Phrecia 2.0 ends soon. This is an event that's running right now. There is still so much to learn. You may also have noticed something happening there. The Scion was walking off the screen carrying Starforge, walking away. Keep that in mind, it'll be important later. Now, this is the Legacy of Phrecia exclusive Ascendancy, the Scion Scavenger. This is just part of the options that are available on that Ascendancy, and I want you to pay attention to how this evolves over time. But just before we do that, something else that's quite interesting. You might notice that Doomfletch here and also Starforge, these show pre-buff versions of these stats. So Doomfletch in the current version of the Legacy of Phrecia 2.0 event, this is 25% of weapon physical damage as extra of each element, and Starforge, the increased area of effect for attacks is 30%. Both of these have been buffed. Those buffs are not reflected in this video Grinding Games put out. However, all of this is probably a moot point because watch what happens as we go another second or two. Everything just faded away. And whilst the player base hasn't converged on one specific explanation as the most likely when it comes to the more sweeping overall changes, there's a lot of different ones coming up that we'll discuss in a sec. One thing that pretty much everyone does agree on is they're probably changing over the weapons that are available. So if you can get access to the Scion Scavenger Ascendancy somehow, and we'll come to some of the ways that might happen, it looks like you're going to have a new set of weapons to choose from, which is probably for the best because you're all picking Void Battery or Obliteration anyway. They were just miles better than everything else. Now, there's several different things people are suggesting could be plausible explanations for what's going on here. Let's start with the most extreme changes to the base game and then pull back down to smaller and smaller changes. One of these is likely to be true. The rest of them are all speculation. And as for which one it is that's true, we'll find that out later. Probably we'll find out the reality when the major livestream event takes place in about 10 days' time. So let's start with the largest possible sweeping change. Maybe Grinding Games have decided to bring every single Phrecia Ascendancy into the base game, either replacing or supplementing the existing Ascendancy choices. This is definitely something they could do. It would mean that there is definitely so much more to learn. As they said earlier, there would be a lot more ability to play around with these Ascendancies, but at the same time, it would also be a tremendous balance mess. And we'd likely see a situation where of the 38 Ascendancies that would be available, probably only 5 or 6 of them would see much play for a league or two. So that's the first possibility. I'm not ruling it out, but it's not something that I think is necessarily all that likely. The second possibility is that they've decided to take some small subset of the Phrecia Ascendancies and make them available in the base game, possibly supplementing the existing Ascendancies, possibly replacing them entirely. Maybe they'll rotate through these. Maybe they've just decided that a small number of them feel like they do something you can't do in the base game. And if that was the case, then there's no question one of the ones you would pick would definitely be the Scion Scavenger. The Scion Ascendant is a very boring and underplayed, uninteresting Ascendancy. It's not that it's never good at anything, it's just that it's not very good at many things. As a result, not that many people are interested in playing it. That's a couple of possibilities. A third possibility is that 18 of the Phrecia Ascendancies aren't coming back, but the Scion Scavenger is. And so this is probably actually the most likely of the lot. The Scavenger would then exist alongside the Ascendant as an option. Let's talk more about the disappearing text boxes and what else that could mean, because all we're seeing here is that the martial weapons are getting changed, but maybe the other uniques are getting changed as well. This indicates that maybe Grinding Games have decided to bring back the Scion Scavenger Ascendancy with some changes. They've decided to say, well, all the existing weapons, you're all playing with Void Battery or Obliteration anyway, so why don't we give a new set of unique items? And that's something that could be really interesting with the whole way that this Ascendancy is set up. The Scavenger is thematically linked to you having a number of heirloom items, just hand-me-downs that your character has acquired. They're potentially very powerful, they have unique effects that are very build-defining, but they are also pulled off existing unique items in the game. There are plenty of unique weapons that are attack-based weapons that are not something like Starforge, but they're iconic. They're iconic in their own way. For example, Granny Games could decide to take Doomfletch and Starforge and kind of combine them together into a Voidforge Ascendancy option. That'd be something that would be interesting, may or may not be good, but at least it would do something cool. And at the same time, there's a lot of other iconic, unique weapons. Mjolnir comes to mind as something that really has been iconic in the past, maybe less so now, but it still does something that's unique and interesting. There's lots of others, and so they could definitely come up with a list of cool effects that would be available, that could be built around, and that would be something that would tie Legacy of Phrecia 2.0 into patch 3.28. Another possibility that people have suggested is that maybe Granny Games have decided that they want to have some, but not all of these Phrecia Ascendancies become available as Bloodlines. I can't necessarily say one way or another that this is definitely right or definitely wrong. I could see ways they might do it. They could potentially, for instance, tie it into the Mercenaries of Trathis League theme. But one thing that I think would happen if that was the case, they probably would pick something other than the Scion Scavenger to show it off. Because ultimately, this is not an Ascendancy that plays well with Bloodlines. And whether it would work well as a Bloodline itself is kind of similar to whether it works well in conjunction with existing Bloodlines. What would effectively happen is that because this is an Ascendancy you almost always want to spend 8 points in, I had a look at the Scavenger builds in Phrecia 2.0 and more than 84% of them have 8 points in the Ascendancy and do not use a Bloodline. What this means is that you would just end up putting all 8 points into your Bloodline, your Scavenger Bloodline, and so it would feel just like having it as an Ascendancy option. The difference, though, is that you could take it wherever you are on the passive tree, and you could take it whichever Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh jewels you have access to, and that might actually make some very interesting combinations. For example, could you imagine a witch that takes all 8 points and spends them in the Scavenger Bloodline in order to get one of the popular setups for Righteous Fire, but does this at the same time as being able to use a Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh jewel to pick up the Elementalist Golem nodes? That could be very, very strong indeed. And there's lots of other things you could conceivably do, such as play with a Scavenger that is using the Herald node that is available in the Elementalist as well. That could be something else that's quite interesting and quite strong. So I'm not ruling this out. It's something a few people in the Path of Exile 1 community have thought is plausible. But personally, I think the most likely thing is they've just decided, you know what, we're going from 19 Ascendancies to 20. We'll keep the Ascendant in the game. Most people don't like it, but some people do. Let them have their fun with it. We're then going to also just add in the Scavenger, a rebalanced version of it, as a new option, taking some of the very best of Legacy of Phrecia and bringing it into the base game. I wouldn't mind seeing this done with a couple of the other Ascendancies as well. I think there's some really interesting things that haven't been explored that much on the Architect of Chaos. It's not necessarily an Ascendancy for everyone, but it does some cool stuff. And likewise, the Servant of Arakali is kind of cool. It's a bit outshone by the other options that are available, but it definitely could replace the Saboteur. No one would miss the Saboteur if it was gone. That's a whole other point. And that could be something really interesting as well. And there'd be other Ascendancies that people might miss a little bit if they were gone, but could be excited to see something else rotate in their place. So personally, I'm hoping they've decided to just rotate in some of the Phrecia Ascendancies and make them available as base game character options. This is going to cause all sorts of balancing nightmares when it comes to Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh jewels. Maybe Granny Games will decide to just let them be completely broken. Maybe they'll decide to put some limits on them. But ultimately, that's going to be things we'll learn more about when we get the patch notes in a week and a half's time. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Welcome to day 2. This has been a pretty big day 2 for teaser season. Even if they haven't told us very much concretely, there is so much to speculate on here. What Legacy of Phrecia Ascendancies would you be interested in playing with if they were available in the base game? Let me know down in the comments below. I'm going to leave it there. May your Varlorbs have ridiculous results.